Greetings guys, it's Irish here. I thought I would show you what I've been doing for the last 5 days ever since my live stream on the beginnings of LFS. Tell you about, it's going to be a little different than some of the others out there. I'm going to show you in the manual some of the hiccups that I ran into, and then at the end of the video I'll show you the boot up. Just note that I only did the base for Linux from scratch, so I have not done BLFS. I am not going to do Beyond Linux from scratch. Today I did my or set up my test schedule for my Security Plus, so that's at the end of February. So I really need to concentrate on that, so I'm not going to probably be doing a lot of videos. So just letting you guys know, I'll try to do one that someone has asked for a little bit. So at the beginning, I had some issues. So if you need to have a live DVD, because it's got a lot of the developmental tools like GCC, Make. Make is your friend with LFS. And tar is your friend with LFS. So I picked, in my live stream, I picked the Arch ISO, live ISO. Everything was fine up until the very first one right here. So when I did binutils, it could not find make directory, and it could not find make. So I'm like, okay, I was going to install the base devel, but throughout this process, I was on Mumble, and DOS was there. DOS Gregor was there, giving me a point here or there. I really didn't. If I was really stumped, I would ask him, and I would ask him stuff to, just to clarify a few things in the manual, because it is very unclear sometimes. So I picked the Gen 2 ISO. Once again, it did not have make, it did not have any of that. So I had to download the Gen 2 Live DVD, because that's pretty much a made or a made Gen 2 for people to try out before going over to Gen 2. So I had everything. I had GCC, make, tar, everything. So that was my first hiccup that I ran into. As you can see, I had to do a lot of this. This took me about 2 days to get through chapter 5. It's just constructing a temporary system. So I had to install GCC twice, binutils twice, check ncurses, bash, and then I can chroot into the actual system. Now, it's really strange that you have to make a temporary thing, but before going into it, but I can see it explains why you need to do it, and it tells you step by step on how to, install Gawk, how to install gzip, how to install patch, because I had to do a couple of manual patches. The next hurdle that I ran into was, if you guys were live with me with my journey to LFS, I was having internet issues. Now, some of these files did not download in the list that they gave you. Like getting the packages, it gives you a wget list. I'll show you what that looks like. So like 2 or 3 of these packages did not give me a list. The links were bad, so I actually had to go into the system, go to their website, go to the exact thing, and then download it from there, and then continued on. but I was having internet issues inside the virtual machine, like it would knock out, and I was doing a lot of this stuff through SSH. Now, every time that you SSH, you have to remount the LFS variable. You have to mount it right here. You have to make a directory called LFS. You have to mount it, and then you could continue. Then you can actually go into the user LFS and continue from there. So that happened every time I had to do it. Later on, so once that was done, everything was fine through this up until shadow. Now, because we're in chapter 6, so we're actually chrooted in. So let me go back really fast and show you what we need to do for that. So you actually have to make a virtual kernel directory. So you have to do dev proc sys run. Then you have to make a node. They explain what the nodes are to those. So like console and null. It explains exactly what those do. Then you have to bind the host dev to the LFS dev. And then you can mount a lot of this other stuff here. Then you can chroot in. So I didn't realize I didn't mount some of these stuff. So when I got to the shadow, let me get to it. When I got to the shadow, shadow is, for those who don't know, it helps, you can read it up here, handling passwords in a secure way. So it encrypts your password. So if shadow didn't exist, if you go into etsy/password, you could actually see it. So if someone remoted in to your, or hacked into your system, it could read your passwords and everything. So this encrypts it. So I did all of this stuff, and then I accidentally did cracklib support, which I think if I did this again, knowing that I mounted, I think it would work. But cracklib doesn't even get installed until BLFS, Beyond Linux from scratch. So when I tried to do a password root, it would not prompt me for my it would not prompt me for a password. It would say it was a weak password, and it would continue on from there. So I actually went into the LFS support IRC channel, and they were trying to figure it out, but apparently I wasn't mounted all the way through. So you really, so if you're not doing this, if you're doing this through SSH, just make sure you have a good enough connection. So, and if you're doing this in a VM, make sure that has good connection, because again, my internet would stop, so I couldn't SSH. And as you could probably imagine, typing all of this out would take a long time. So that's why I SSH'd. A lot of this stuff, like anytime it was a group like this, I would probably copy paste. But if it was a simple something or a simple line like that, I would actually type it out. And I can't tell how many times I typed make install. To speed up some of the process, there's test suites in each one, just about each one of these different packages. You can skip a lot of it unless the guide tells you not to skip it, like in the GCC one. Then you can skip it. I did it every now and then just to make sure everything was going right, because a lot of the stuff in the tests, the make check, would fail. So, and they say, hey, this may fail because you'll be running this again later through auto. Make auto? No. Auto make. So I waited on a lot of this. So again, this is very well documented, as everyone who's ever done this and has vlogged about it the tedious part is every time you go into this, you're in your sources. So you have to tar it, cd into it, do everything in here, go back to source, and delete said directory. And then rinse and repeat. The only thing that you don't have to do is way down here when we're actually doing the final thing for the Linux kernel. So again, each one of these you have to untar, go into the directory, do everything it says to do, go back to the sources directory, and then remove all of these after you're done with it. So it was strange. It took me a bit to get used to deleting what I just did, because you have to make a directory called build, and so yeah, it was very interesting. So once you get through like chapter 5 and 6 doing this, you actually get into a rhythm. And I started talking with people as I was doing this inside Mumble. Das was mostly the person that I actually talked to more. He didn't really help me too much with this. Just I didn't really experience any error messages except for the shadow thing where I couldn't create a password. And yeah, so we were just chatting, and he was telling me that he was still on LFS. He was trying to get like LibreOffice, and I think now he's trying to get gaming to work on LFS. So he's actually lived on LFS since his video. So, which is, I don't think I could do that. So the other issue recently that I had was you have to create the Fstab. So everything that you take for granted, your Fstab, your profile, your make, top, processes, everything you have to do by hand. So if you type in htop, the PID or the processing identification, you have to create that. You have to get the package that does that. And then you have to create by hand your Fstab. And then you have to change where your kernel is. Where your root mount is. What type? I did an ext4. I left it as default in 1.1, and then if you had any others, like a var or a home partition, you would have to put that in there. But I left this pretty much, and then it explains a little bit of what no auto, user, quiet, show, exec does. And then you actually have to go back to sources, since you're somewhere else at the previous Fstab thing. You have to go back to sources, untar the Linux one. This would be the last time you would have to do it. Make mr proper, which a lot of Gentooers probably know a lot about this. Make menu config, make module install, and then you're moving it all over to the boot. And then if you installed anything here, you have to do it that way. Now then you have to create some of the mod probe.d and stuff like that. Oh, 1 second, sorry. Sometimes I hate for the different workspaces. Anyway, so then you're setting up grub by hand. So I asked one of the last questions I asked Das was, did he install the XORRISO? Because you actually have to go into Beyond Linux from scratch, which I did. So follow this link. This is a little taste of Beyond Linux from scratch. He tells you, Caddy and Das told you, like, you can go down in a rabbit hole, but just for this one package, it requires these two. And then you have to go into this, download it. So each time I had to do this outside of the trooted environment because wget wasn't working inside the chroot. Go to my sources, go back into root and continue on, go back into sources, untar this, do this, make install, go back, do this one. Once that's done, getting the files and everything, then you can move on to this. And then once that's done, you can finally move on to this. This is just to make sure that you actually have a rescue in case grub does not work. And then you install the grub. Then you create your grub.cfg. Now, a lot of distros out there has the mk grub mkconfig.o boot grub blah blah blah. But as you can see here, let me see here. The command grub mkconfig that can write the configuration file automatically. It uses a set of scripts in the etc grubd and will destroy any customizations. These scripts are designed primarily for non-source distributions and are not recommended for LFS. So I actually had to go and create it instead of doing the grub mkconfig, because that's what I usually do in Arch, Gentoo, any others that I've been on. So where I ran into my last issue was, since they are saying that you have a boot partition and a root partition, so I had to copy this, change, since the root would be on technically the third sector on the hard drive, you would have to do it to 2, but I had to change this to 1. And then once again, root, because there would be a boot and a root, I had to change this to SDA1. Shut everything down, remove the live DVD, and everything magically appeared. So the next thing I can do from here on is Beyond Linux from scratch, which I don't know if I'll be able to do. Like I said earlier, I just did my test. Just did my test for Security Plus. Sorry, I set a date. I kept saying I'm studying. At least now I have a date, and now I'm going to study my butt off. If I can build my own Linux distribution pretty much from scratch, because again, you have to do everything by hand. I think I could probably do that. I hope to pass, because I did take my A+ and I wasn't ready at the time, and I failed it, so hopefully I'm not failing this since it is expensive. But the moment of truth, I will show you guys what it looks like. So it's nothing to sneeze about, but LFS explains the booting process, like what it does. Like the sysv init is what I'm using. I could have done systemd if I wanted to, but not if it's in a virtual machine. I'm only going to play for it. I did this for learning purposes again. So once again, moment of truth. Switch. And as you can see, there's the GNU/Linux, Linux 4.12, LFS.81. That's the version it's on. As you see, there's no restore, or the restore one that a lot of other distros have. So clicking it on, and this is the kernel booting up, mounting the file systems, the temp, the daemon. I did not set my networking card correctly, but it doesn't matter because I did, and I forgot to do my syntax error. But there you go. I can echo out my etc cat hostname LFS vbox. And now from here on out, I could create a user. Sorry, there you go. I could create a user and go on to Beyond Linux from scratch. But once again, I'm not doing it because I lost a lot of sleep doing this. Every time I only did it like 3 to 4 hours per night, and when I actually did go to bed, I could just see lines of code going across in my head. Like I still had a lot more to do. So hopefully after the test, if they don't change the Beyond Linux from scratch, I will continue on with that. But I need to concentrate on my Security Plus. But let me know what you guys think. If granted, this isn't what you probably expect out of the whole thing, because Das Gregor showed a Xorg and XFCE and i3 and all that, but it's LFS. I'm going to take it wholeheartedly that I actually built LFS. Granted, it's not, what a lot of people do, but dang it, I built it. So, uh, again, put down in the comments what you guys think of it. If you have any questions, I can try to answer them. But hopefully, you guys have a good week, and I will see you guys later.